How's it going? Anything interesting to share? Any information?
I don't think so. I've been kind of leading a boring life lately.
Great. Running real thin on intros, but...
I have come on a mission of gravest consequence. For I am the Watcher, member of an ancient race far older than man. But though our power is great, we are pledged only to watch, never to interfere. But now mankind faces the greatest danger it has ever known. The danger of
the Watchers of Earth 199,999.
Welcome to the Watchers of Earth 199,999. I am your host, Andrew, and joining me as always is my co-host, Seth.
As always.
Our third co-host, Joe, couldn't be here today because Seth absorbed him for his power, but our fourth co-host, Uatu, is here, but is sworn only to watch and never interfere.
As always. So today we watched episode... Fuck if I know.
I think it's 4?
Episode 4 of What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands. That's not the name of the show, that's the name of the episode. Well, it's both, I guess. So, Andrew, in a sentence or less, what did I think? We say this every week, and I say that every week, because broken record is right twice a day. This is a problem.
The show, this...
life. Marvel muck. I was thinking watching this that I have seen a lot of Marvel cartoons. I've seen a lot of superhero cartoons. I've seen a lot of Marvel cartoons. I've seen a lot of, X-Men, X-Men Evolution, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And, I'm watching this and I don't really remember it. I think this is the first episode that was really problematic in this regard. But I'm watching this and I'm going, it just can't tell an anthology story. Everything has to be a Marvel Cinematic Universe thing. Like, this isn't just like a story about Doctor Strange. This isn't like a what if story about This is like a whole Marvel Cinematic Universe thing. Especially since this is the one that I feel like the Watcher is most involved in. And it's like, all I could think of is stop trying to make this a thing. And I know saying that 10 years later and billions and billions and billions of dollars later when it like completely took over the world is old man yells at cloud. But it's true for me. I don't know, especially this one. I felt like maybe I'm too stupid for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I felt this one made the least amount of sense as it tried to tie in.
I will say, I have a lot of thoughts on this one. I think this one is one of the more entertaining ones overall. I think it tells a better version, or not a better version, but a better Doctor Strange story than the Doctor Strange movie did. It is part of the Marvel muck, and that's a problem, especially, like you said, the Watcher is involved in this one, and this is start of it's clear. We watch media. You know exactly what the Watcher interacting at the end means. Mm-hmm. This isn't an anthology show. It's not. It will be for a while. It's not going to matter for a bit. But
it's frustrating. It's like the same frustration of watching... It's the same frustration of Stranger Things, which you watch Stranger Things season 1, you're like, this is awesome. I can't wait for the next, anthology season, completely separated season 2. And they're like, well, season 1 made so much money. Why would we do something different when this is tried and true? And it's that same frustration and disappointment of... I wanted a fun, disconnected anthology series, but we can't have it.
I also think when we get into the discussion, I have like a very nitpick little kind of like my endgame time travel rant. I have a very stupid little nitpick rant that I've got about this because the inherent logic of the episode, I think, works within itself. But because it is part of the Marvel everything, the logic of how this episode works and why it is the way it is does not make any sense.
Good. I thought I was stupid. And you mentioned it as a nitpick thing, and maybe you're referring to something different that you kind of alluded to. But I think the fact that this one has all the dialogue with the Watcher, where he's just like, he has to comment on so much stuff, even outside of the stuff where he literally talks to Doctor Strange. I felt like at the beginning, there's a lot of just explaining that this is not an anthology and that there is a story here.
Let's jump in. Tell me at the beginning what it is that you're... I guess I don't know exactly what you're referencing here.
I thought there was... Because, at the end... Well, one, the Watcher is the first thing you see in this episode. And I thought he did a little bit more than just introduce like he always does, but maybe, I mean, we just spent 45 minutes talking about nonsense. And so that's plenty of time for us to forget after we just watched it. So I might be totally wrong, but I thought there was more stuff than just at the end with Doctor Strange talking to the Watcher. I thought there was stuff about how, like, you know, the Watcher was kind of getting more into just, like, this is how, like, time works, and I don't know. I mean, I'm probably wrong, and maybe I'm
you might be right. I
with,
just
with the
don't
Ancient
remember
One,
this at all.
They bring in, like, ultimatum points or whatever, which I know is not the Watcher, but there was something about this one that just felt more... All the other episodes that we've watched so far have just kind of been like, what would have happened if this? Whereas this one I felt opened up with something a little bit more where it's just like, you know, if you try and go against all this stuff and destiny and all this thing, and it was just more than just an anthology thing at that point.
Here's my big rant, and just because I cut myself off, not that it really matters, but just to show you how my brain works with these sort of things. I mentioned to you earlier that I watched The Last Action Hero today for the very first time. I've never seen it before, and I quite enjoyed it, but I think it is a movie that does not work with its own logic. You said you don't really remember it, but the movie is basically a kid gets a magic movie ticket that allows him to go into an action movie that he's watching, and the first half of the movie is he's basically in the movie world, and it's falling into tropes and whatnot, and he's pointing them out. Problem is that it has kind of like a Wreck-It Ralph logic without wanting to have the Wreck-It Ralph logic, where they're in a movie world, and it seems to be all movies together, but it's also not, and no one knows they're in a movie.
I kind of remember that.
My big point of contention is that when he's in the movie world, like he goes to the police precinct, and the police precinct is like weird, and there's a bunch of like weird characters, including like some sci-fi characters. There's a cartoon cat on the force, and he's like, this is a movie universe. It's so weird. And they talks to like the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, Jack, whatever the hell his name is, who is just like your typical action star. He's like, there's a cartoon cat. And he's like, yeah, he's on the force. Like, I see him all the time. And there's a point in the movie where the cat like comes and saves them when they're being held at gunpoint. But he's not entering the world of movies. And it's not like the Roger Rabbit thing at the beginning where they film a cartoon and then afterwards all the cartoons go home and live their lives. They just work on cartoon logic. They're not like stopping their scenes from the movie and then like going and doing something else. There's even like a point where he's like the scenery just changed. He's like, it's a scene change. The kid is like that, but everyone just like reacts like this is the world they live in. But they're not like stepping away from the movie. They don't even need to necessarily acknowledge that they live in a movie verse, but he is basically in the world of the movie he's watching, which is your typical PG-13 action movie. And if in that movie, while he is watching it, not in the universe, a character were to come up to that Jack, the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, and say, there's a cartoon cat over there, he would not say, yeah, he's on the force. He'd be like, that doesn't make any sense because I live in the real fucking world where, yes, I have action tropes, but like a cartoon cat isn't a thing.
Yeah.
But the movie ignores that. And part of it is because it wants to have its fun with like the movie world stuff. But like my brain can ignore that enough to watch the movie and enjoy it. I liked the movie.
I remember liking it.
But the entire time my brain just kept going like, none of this makes any sense. It's just kind of doing whatever it wants. Same thing. There's a point at the end where the ticket is like dropped and the Jack character is in the real world. They're in the real world now. And the fictional Arnold Schwarzenegger character has been shot and is dying. And they want to get him back into the movie because in the movie, he won't die from that sort of thing because nobody does. But in the real world, that is a thing that would kill him. But the ticket's dropped and people are watching, what's it called? What's the movie with death where they play chess?
I don't know.
The Seventh Seal?
I was going to say The Seventh Seal.
The ticket's dropped. Death comes out of the movie. He goes up to Schwarzenegger and the kid. The kid's like, you can't take him. I'm not going to let you take him. And then Death is like, you're confused. I'm not here for him. I was just interested because he's not on my list. And I was like, okay, but he's not on your list because you're movie Death, not Death. Persona. Like, you're not Death. You're just Death from the movie. And if we were going off the logic at the beginning of the movie, this Death would have him on there because apparently all movies are fucking connected. But then I was like, whatever, it doesn't matter. But then he goes, okay, little kid, you are on my list. And I see that you're going to die a grandfather. And I was like, you wouldn't have this kid on your list. You're movie Death. You're not real Death. This kid's in the real world. The whole reason you don't have this guy on your list is because he's a movie character and doesn't actually... It was just like a thing where like my brain broke in that moment. And it was just like smoke coming out of my ears. And I was like, none of this makes sense. And it's all fine, but it's the sort of thing like people can get away with this constantly. Nobody cares but me. But like I, as a writer who I do write things, this is the kind of stuff that will force me to like never finish something because I just can't find a logical way around it and have the story that I want to tell.
So I had a lot of similar things, to circle back here. I had a lot of similar things with this, and I assume you did as well. This being not the last action hero, but this being what if Doctor Strange, I don't know, was like the lion from The Wizard of Oz or something. And this episode, we've kind of mentioned this with the other episodes, but this episode does not work outside of the MCU. I think you need to have seen Doctor Strange.
I disagree. I mean, I think you're right in a way. I think this movie doesn't work within the MCU.
No,
because it's the whole logic
I
that
agree.
motivates the plot cannot function with the way we understand the MCU as it's presented.
And that was going to be my next point. But I also think that without any of the context or motives behind what happened in Doctor Strange and like what anybody is doing, I think this also falls apart there as a standalone.
I disagree. As much as any of these episodes do, I think this gives you enough information. And I'm saying this as someone who knows the information, so I could be wrong here.
Well, and I forget a lot of Doctor Strange.
I think this gives you enough information. I don't think you need to know anything about the plot of Doctor Strange for it to function.
I guess like with the previous ones, I felt like you could have a passing knowledge. And this, I mean, and maybe it's just me and maybe I am wrong because, I mean, honestly, I don't remember much of Doctor Strange. So me going in, not really remembering Doctor Strange, I felt like a lot of it was because it's so tied to the MCU. It's like, it just calls back on things way more than the other episodes did.
See, I guess I don't think of anything. I feel like it runs on its own plot. I don't think it.
So here's a question.
I don't recall anything that it's calling back to. Okay, what's your question?
In Doctor Strange,
Mm-hmm.
his girlfriend, what's her name? Christine.
Mm-hmm.
She's not in that car at the beginning, right?
No, and I guess I didn't even realize that was this. And this is me being stupid. I didn't realize that was the same accident from the beginning of the movie. I thought this
I
was
assume
just
because
a
it's
different
what if
event.
he lost his heart?
No. Yeah, you're right. The difference is that she's in the car with him.
So, as we've said before, all of these are like, what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? But it's like, also, a million things are different, and like the fish never learned to walk on land, and so these are all based on different animals. Like, the what if premise is not actually the what if premise, or is not actually the deviation or culmination of where all this stuff comes from. But I think, one, I might not have been in the spot to watch this, and I don't know if you want to go through this a little more structured, but it was almost comical to watch him do his little Christine death montage. And that did not... One, I think it's very, not that you can't do this, but I think it's very overdone. I don't think there's anything interesting said in the first 5 minutes of this where he's just like, I'm going to keep going back in time and saving her. And it's just like, she died this way, so I'm not going to do that. Oh, but she died anyway. Oh, now we flew off the cliff. Oh, now she died. I didn't even show up. And now a bomb exploded. And it's just like, it's a little comical for me, maybe because I do not care. And it's not an interesting, like, that story's done a million times. And I think after that, like, when he goes crazy, I don't even know where to begin with this. I mean, the time travel stuff, especially coming off of Loki, is so fucked.
Okay. We're going to get into this in a second, and I'm going to have a big rant that I'm going to need to get into. But before we do, just to get back on your thing so that I understand where you're coming from, I guess... I'm still confused. What is the information you think you need to know from the Doctor Strange movie in order to watch this?
I guess to me, the Ancient One just shows up. Wong is there at the Sanctum Sanctorum acting like nothing has ever happened. I think honestly, the whole death montage, if you don't know who I guess, yeah, you don't need to know who Christine is because she's not really a character in this either. But like, without knowing Doctor Strange, and I mean, if you want to argue this on the other episodes, we can get into that. If you don't know Doctor Strange, the what if situation doesn't really make any sense.
I disagree.
You're not knowing what he's trading. Like, especially since the show kind of talks about like, this is a different story. Like, this is what could happen if things are left unchecked.
I will agree with your point that I think Doctor Strange is who exactly he is and who like the Ancient One and Wong are is not explained in this. It's just kind of like, you know who these guys are. But I think also you can kind of go off of just like, he's a wizard and he does wizard things, and that's more than enough. Christine, I don't think is any more or less of a character in this than she is in the Doctor Strange movie. And honestly, the fact that he is going on a date with her at the beginning of the episode and then she gets in an accident and he's upset and he keeps trying and she keeps dying is all the information you need to know, because she's not a character. She's a woman in a fridge. She gets killed to motivate the man, which I'm not saying is a good thing, but I'm
Right,
saying
no.
like in the episode's defense, like
I mean, that's
you
fair.
don't need to know anything.
I mean, she's a non-character in this, and you're right. I mean, I really don't remember from. I mean, out of all the things I don't remember from this Doctor Strange movie, I do not remember her, which is why I had to clarify if she was actually in the car in the first one or not.
I think she was actually not in the car because they had like a fight or something, which this episode does not bother to explain. And I might be wrong, but I think before that happens, they have some kind of fight. But I could be completely wrong on that. In fact, I am wrong because they don't have a fight until after he breaks his hand and he starts throwing a tantrum. My big thing with this episode is, like you said, in the Marvel Universe, time is fucked. It makes no sense. And in as much as it clearly establishes rules, which it does not, but enough that I understand what it thinks the rules are, this does not make any sense.
This is worse than everything in that we've said that all of these have logic for what the words actually say, not what they mean. You can't think past them any more than the words. I don't think this episode even follows that.
I think this episode follows its own logic, at least. The problem is that logic does not make sense in the context, especially because this is the episode that clearly says this is part of the MCU. Like, this is a thing.
Yeah.
This anthology is not an anthology. It's a series.
Yeah.
I had said this before. In the comic universe, What If is just alternate realities. And everybody might be a monkey because everybody's just a monkey.
Mm-hmm.
In the MCU, as we understand it, there is no such thing as just an alternate reality. And granted, I've already said this before, when we get to Spider-Man Far From Home and the Raimi-verse starts showing up, because it clearly is showing up in the trailers, that gets a little wibbly-wobbly.
We'll revisit that. And I
Yeah,
guess we'll probably...
but-
I wonder if we'll even revisit it next episode, because to me, I don't know what they're going to do. I know where you're kind of going with this statement you're going to be making soon. Zombies seems like an alternate... Like, I don't know what they're going to do to mix that in with what they're doing here in this episode. And we can get to that. If you don't think there's a conversation for it next episode, we can have it here. But if you do, we'll have it there.
We'll have it there, because I don't remember it very well, but I think I know what you're getting at, and I think I know where it goes. And that'll be a conversation.
That's fine.
Especially because these episodes have, unless we have something very minute to argue about for a while,
We got
these
nothing.
episodes are kind of straightforward.
But just you saying that, like, what if in the comics are alternate universes? What if zombies... I mean, maybe at the beginning there's a thing where, like, the Watcher's just like, in this one, there's, like, a virus... Like, Bruce Banner tries to cure himself as the Hulk, and he makes the virus, and everybody turns into zombies. And it's like, I guess, but isn't it just like
There's
an alternate
something like
universe?
that. I don't remember what it is, but there's something where it's like, this thing creates zombies. But as far as the MCU works, as we have been introduced to it so far...
As we spent 8 hours talking in Loki about...
There's no such thing as an alternate universe. I mean, there is, but alternate universes aren't just like a universe where everything's different. It's a timeline.
Yes.
There are no alternate universes so much as there are alternate timelines.
Yes.
And so in this one, this is an alternate timeline. In this episode, the logic I think is fine. There's a fixed point in time that whatever the hell her name is, Christine, took me a bit. Christine is a fixed point in time that she dies. She has to die. The universe will make sure that she dies. Whatever, I get it. It within itself, it makes enough sense to propel the plot. The problem is, this is part of the Marvel Universe, where we have been told rules that conflict with this. This is not an alternate timeline, because this would assert that the timeline we've been watching is a divergent of the...
Because Christine
what is
doesn't
the
die
true
in the first
timeline.
one.
Yeah, the true timeline says Christine should die. So somehow, the universe we've been watching is a divergent timeline that somehow existed without her dying. Because this posits that this is not an alternate universe.
This is how
a
it
timeline.
needs to be.
In the true timeline, Christine must die, to the point that the universe will sacrifice anything to make sure that she dies. It is so important that she dies for some reason. And it's not just like the car accident is always going to happen in some capacity. She gets shot, her building catches fire, and they say that there are multiple casualties, including her.
Yeah, this isn't a Final Destination thing.
She
This
gets
is-
a heart attack while they're dancing. Like, this is fucking nonsense. And like, I'll say like all that stuff doesn't really make sense, but if you run off the logic of the timeline only cares that Christine dies because, I don't know, that's the only thing that will motivate Doctor Strange to learn magic, which, let's get into that. Doctor Strange studies magic because he is trying every possible medical thing to get his hands back, and then he overhears that someone came from a miraculous recovery, and that guy goes, yeah, I went to like Kathmandu and they did some wild stuff and it worked. And he's like, yeah, I guess I'll go try that. And then he learns magic. In this, he's just like, my girlfriend died. fucking magic must be real. It's the only answer.
But see, I don't even think it's that. I think he's just like, the audience knows I'm Doctor Strange, so I know magic exists.
Exactly.
It's not like he goes through the journey of discovering magic. I mean, I guess there's like one bit of a montage where he's just like, I know exactly what to do. And then the next scene is him doing like the teleport thing. But it's so... I think the pacing in this episode is god-awful. And you've seen all of this. And I assume since you haven't said anything and this is your rant, maybe you've forgotten. I don't know.
I've seen all of this and I'm going back in time to stop it.
But like...
I'm doing my own Doctor Strange.
I mean, at the end, this is kind of resolved, isn't it? Like, I know we just watched this, but then we talked for 45 minutes about FedEx. But like, he comes to term that he cannot save her.
I mean, yes, but he destroys his entire... his quote-unquote universe is gone. Like, this isn't like he decides that it's not worth it, like he can't save her and he gives up. It's bad. The universe is done, and I guess there's nothing. He can't turn back time anymore because the timeline is fucked. But I don't know.
But the movie ones don't care about that.
No.
And like, this isn't like a story being told. The show doesn't want us, the audience, to say, oh, but Christine didn't die in the Doctor Strange movie, so okay. Like, the show doesn't want us to do what we're doing now.
The show is trying to distract us. It doesn't want us to think
visuals.
About that. It keeps saying like, this is the timeline, and I'm just someone who like thinks about these things.
As someone who spent 6 hours watching Loki, a show I didn't care for, and came out of it going, what the fuck does any of this stuff mean? I don't care. I don't need to know. You're mucking this up. And then to immediately go into this and have me be like, you're not even following the 6 hours of crap I watched. Why did I have to watch it? Now that we know that, are they divergences? Deviants. Now that we know deviants exist, shouldn't the TFA have been here?
I think the point of this is that, like, post-Loki, the timeline is going all haywire because I don't know what the TVA does anymore. They still exist at the end of Loki, but it seems to be they don't go pruning timelines anymore.
But, like, they existed before Loki, right? Like, Loki wasn't the first person to be TVA'd.
No. But what I'm saying is I think the idea of what if is because the Marvel Universe is, I've said this before, the Marvel Universe is almost always moving forward. Nothing ever existed in the background. It's always like, every time you sit down for a movie, almost every time, Black Widow and Captain Marvel being the two outliers, it's always like, this is taking place directly after this, like everything else. So, like, anytime you introduce someone new, like, when we get to the Fantastic Four, I've said before, I think you should have the Fantastic Four off doing something coming into the Marvel Universe, but it's going to be like, they get their powers and they show up 20 years into the universe existing.
Yes.
But I think what if is supposed to be like, now that the TVA isn't doing what it used to be doing, these are the timelines that are happening.
Because, like, especially this being a Doctor Strange episode, it calls into question for me, doesn't this have something to do with him going back in time in the first place in the Infinity Gauntlet?
He doesn't go back in time. You mean when he's, like, looking at all the timelines?
Don't they... No, like, the whole... I mean, I guess Doctor Strange doesn't, so that's out the window. But, like, they go back in time.
Oh, yes. In Endgame?
Sure. But, like... I don't know what I'm saying anymore, because now I realize that, like, my whole understanding of all of this is probably wrong. But for someone who has read comics and likes time travel crap, this is total nonsense and not in a good way. And again, I don't know if this is just because the Marvel Cinematic Universe is too grounded for its own good, and so I think
that's definitely one of the problems. Like I said, everything has to be over-explained.
We used to say, how about comics? I mean, that's the whole reason where So how about came from... Every Wednesday we'd talk comics and we'd say, so how about this? We had the whole thing. I think we've had 2 lightning in bottles that we weren't able to capture. One was the Almighty Johnsons. Another was you explaining Spider City, Spider Town, what was it?
I don't think it was Spider Island.
No, because you were like, you were like, everybody has spider powers.
I don't think
and I was like, why does everyone have spider powers? And you're like, okay, well, there's like Spider Jam, like everybody.
Oh no, it wasn't Spider Island. It was you started reading Spider-Man because of one really good issue that I had read that was like kind of standalone, sort of standalone, and you really liked it. But you said like, why doesn't Spider-Man have his spider sense anymore?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, because there was like it was like a Spider Slayer story going on and all these like different Spider Slayer people or something. And I don't remember the details. All I remember is at one point they set off a spider EMP that knocked out his spider sense powers.
And I was fine with that. But here...
You weren't only fine with it, you're just like, love it.
I was like, this is such a fun idea to have like this stupid spider... It's stupid crap that works in comics or in animated stuff.
And stuff that doesn't take itself too seriously. That
Which is
cares
not what
only
the
about
MCU
running within
is.
its own logic.
Right, which is not what
Yes.
the MCU is, and that's the problem, especially when you start getting into this timeline stuff, because then I just sit there and I'm just like, wait, why is this an exception? Why are we allowed to do this? Christine didn't die in the Doctor Strange movie, so why is that not a big deal if she's always supposed to die? She never wasn't, like, it's so much crap, especially, like, I thought he time traveled a little bit, but maybe not. I know they time travel at the end of Endgame or whatever. Like, that's how they kind of resolve everything. But, like, there's so many questions that come into play because it's so grounded.
I mean, yes, because it's grounded, but I guess by extension because it's grounded. It's because it's so over-explained, and it's so over-explained because it was so grounded that it needs to explain all of its fantastical stuff.
Well, and you can't explain this crap. And so when they try, it's
all
bloated mess.
Contradicting gobbledygook.
Yeah, like... It's not even like gobbledygook jargon, where they're just like, yeah, we took the chronoton temporal blocospheres, and, you know, if we combine them, we have the magic to separate the chronotons, and yada, yada, and then we're all like, yeah, science gobbledygook, got it. They're like, you know, they do the thing at the beginning where the Watcher's just like, time is shattered glass, and every fraction is a thing, and deviance, and yada, yada, yada. And then they show an episode, and they're just like, okay, but don't worry about any of that, because none of that's in here, and we're just going to be jumping around willy-nilly. Because there's, like, the thing where the Ancient One, like, splits him into two, which is a different timeline. Like,
how about that, where she's just like, I split you into two for... I don't even remember what her logic was.
So that we could have a show?
Yes. She's like, you went and studied dark magic for centuries, but the other Stephen Strange hung out and decided not to do the evil stuff, and now you guys can fight.
And he's coming for you.
I think it's also there so that all of these have kind of had, like, positive endings.
Not the ego one.
I mean, they've all had
Yeah.
either a positive ending with, like, a negative...
This one introduces consequences into what we're watching.
Yes.
Which I don't need in a what-if show.
But I think the Doctor Strange fight at the end was basically there so that, one, they could have an action scene, and two, because it was like, well, obviously there needs to be, like, a positive resolution to this, so that was, like, making you think, like, obviously the good Doctor Strange is going to win out, and then he doesn't. He fails. This is an episode about failure, which I think in and of itself, a lot of this episode is fine. I think it's part of the broader stuff where it all starts to fall apart. Like, I like the Wizard's Duel.
Yeah.
That's some of the best magic stuff we've seen in this stupid fucking science stuff bullshit
Well,
universe.
that's because they can do stuff with it. I mean, as much as I've complained about the animation and, like, the crazy contrast and bloom and all that stuff.
Speaking of the animation real quick, I think a lot of it, again, looks as good as it does anywhere else. There's still a lot of bloom. The magician guy, I don't even know if he's a magician, the librarian guy,
Yeah.
for some reason, he looks like he's, like, not fully rendered. When he's, like, on his deathbed, he was, like, missing lines on his face.
There's a lot
And
of
he
that. I think it's just part of, like, the cell shading engine they're using.
Anyway, I just wanted to point that out because it was really weird. Because they would cut back to, like, Strange, and then after that, we went to Wong and Strange in his house. And I was like, they have, like, so many more lines on their face. And it was like, is that guy, was he not modeled after someone? Did something go wrong?
I noticed that he had, like, thicker strokes on his lines, because then they would cut to Strange, and his were, like, really thin. But I mean, like you said, the magic duel, I thought they took advantage of the animation. It really worked with it being dark, and all the magic was very bright.
They weren't just, like, whipping magic whips at each other and opening, like, magic shields. There was actual, like, especially because evil Doctor Strange gets a ton of powers. So he gets, like, tentacles. He does that really cool thing where he, like, turns into the other Strange's, like, he turns into a ball of light, and then he becomes the other Strange's shadow.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was awesome.
No, that was cool.
There's a
Then he,
lot of
drags
really
him into
fun
it.
stuff in here. Yeah.
And I think it honestly looks better because it's animated. It looks a little more flowing. It looks a little more loose, probably because it is then a CGI rendered movie stuff where it has to fit into a grounded, realistic world, and you can't just have these, like...
Where you have to have a physical camera that has to be mounted somewhere, so... Because, like, I was thinking of, like, there's the bit where his cape comes off of him and flies off, and then both of their capes are fighting each other. And there's, like, dynamic, kind of, like, exaggerated cameras with, like, lenses that kind of, like, exaggerate stuff in a way that I was like, you would never film this physically.
Right. Because
even with the CGI, because it would look wrong in contrast to the rest of the movie, because everything's, even when it's dynamic, it's still kind of static, because you have a real camera,
a real
space with real people. But in this, like, you can kind of, like I said, when it was flying around, there's a thing where it was, like, flying towards the camera, and, like, It was obviously stretched.
You can go off model more in something like this, and it doesn't look weird because it's a drawing. So I agree with that. But I think there's just so much, I don't even know where we came from, and I was just like, I'll take it, I got it. You mentioned that outside of the Marvel stuff, this isn't a bad story, and I think I agree. My only caveat is that I think it's also a story that's been told a lot more without the Marvel muck.
True. There's nothing truly unique about this story.
Yeah, like, and that's what I mean about, like, I was kind of already off on the wrong foot at the beginning because I knew what they were doing, and it was kind of, like, nonsensical to just kind of be like, okay, so, like, if I try and pass this truck, she dies, but I don't want her to die, so I'll do something else. And then it's just like one of those things where it's like a cartoon where, like, a cartoon
where the Wile E. Coyote paints a tunnel.
Yeah.
And the Roadrunner runs through it, and he's like, okay, well, then I'll run through it. And then he slams into it. And it's just like the logic exists for whatever the moment needs, not what the...
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, there's a falling cartoon safe, and so Doctor Strange takes Christine and is like, oh, the safe's gonna fall on you, and moves her to the other side, and then, like, the safe falling in midair, like, moves to that side. Like, that's how all of those death montages felt. It felt so cartoony. And as much as I've been talking about it, I think it's because this is a cartoon. And so while the MCU is grounded, this has the weird, as we've been saying, juxtaposition to it, where the stories need to be grounded, but it's animated, so they can get away with a bit more. That's what we were talking about with the first episode, where Captain Carter is doing grandiose things. You can get away with it, but it doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't work because of everything else around it.
Yeah.
Or everything else, not even around it, but everything just around, like, the universe of these movies that they've made.
Yeah. Honestly, I can't believe we haven't gotten here. Maybe you don't feel the same, and this will just be dead on arrival. This is Benedict Cumberbatch doing the worst Benedict Cumberbatch impression ever.
I thought he was fine.
I thought he was terrible. I was 100% certain this was not Benedict Cumberbatch.
So I was kind of thinking that this time, and I was like, I guess it's fine. I don't know. I think I remember when I watched this the first time, wondering the entire episode if it was actually him or not.
I think his accent comes and goes so frequently, especially since he's also doing, like, evil Benedict Cumberbatch, or I guess evil Stephen Strange. There's just, like, so much crap. And again, I don't remember Doctor Strange. I mean, that was a long time ago, even outside of us watching it.
It was one of the few you liked more than I did.
But he's just not... I mean, that was the last Benedict Cumberbatch thing I saw. So maybe this is just what he sounds like. But it did not sound like how I imagined Benedict Cumberbatch to sound. And, I mean, this comes from us. In all these episodes, I think I've been the one to say that I think everybody's done a fine job in the recording booth. I do not think this was a good job by him. It's distracting.
It didn't make an impact on me
this time
enough to
you said
to
last
disagree
time. I should
or
have talked
agree
to
with
you
you
last time. Maybe if I watched this
because I think I remember looking at the credits and being like, oh, I guess it is him. But this time, like, maybe it was because I already knew it was him, so I was just like kind of fine with it. Same thing with, like, I mentioned in the second episode, when I watched it the first time, I thought Yondu was not voiced by whatever the fuck his name is that I can't think of right now. I don't know. I can't think of it. Anyway, I thought it wasn't voiced by him. I did not think it sounded like him. It sounded like someone doing a terrible impression of him. And then I saw his name in the credits. Watching it again the second time through, I was like, it sounds like him. But I think it was just because I knew it was him. Mm-hmm. So there was like no disagreeing with myself.
You already resolved that part of your questioning.
You can't disagree with the fact. So I think that might have been it, because I do remember looking up the credits and being like, oh, I guess that is Benedict.
Because this felt similar. I said a similar thing to Black Widow in the last one, which was not Scarlett Johansson, and this felt very similar. But at the end, I was like, oh, it was Benedict Cumberbatch.
But yeah, anyway, he fights himself, and then he absorbs himself, and then...
the universe absorbs itself.
The universe, like, everybody turns into, like, smoky ghosts and disappears, and then he's in, a glass bubble or something. I don't know what was really necessarily going on at the end, but then the Watcher's like, you didn't listen to me, even though I couldn't tell you anything because I can't interfere, but then you saw me, and uh-oh.
Now we gotta... This isn't just like a fun show.
You're ruining my anthology.
Hey, do you remember when Doctor Strange was trying to save Christine, and then he learns that, like, the universe is going to explode if he saves her, and then he thinks back and he's like, oh, I'm going to lose Wong. But, like, you turned evil to save Christine, and we didn't see you interact with Wong. He said he was going to make tea, and he's like, don't do something stupid. Drink tea with me. And then later, he's just like, Juan was such a cool guy, I can't let him die. I'm like, you went through all this trouble to save
Maybe that was the
Christine.
bit of himself that he absorbed.
Do you have anything else to talk about? This episode's kind of a mess, and we didn't really structure it, so there's a bunch of mess in here.
There's not really much, like all of these, when you boil it down, there's not really a lot to talk about unless you find it was 30
nitpick
minutes,
or a
thing to hone into. Like, the plot is basically Christine keeps dying. Strange decides to go back in time and save her, but he can't. And then for some reason, the Ancient One shows up and says, like, hey, you're going to come find me. But she doesn't know that he's been time traveling. So what was up with that? When she shows up at the crash site and she's like, this is the moment you decide to come find magic or something. And then he's like, yeah, I ain't going to do that. And then she's like, wait a minute, you're the Doctor Strange that's been time traveling. I didn't know that. And I'm like, what? You didn't time travel here, but you didn't do this before. What's going on?
Hey,
And then he's like, now I'm going to go to this library.
Yeah, when he goes to the castle of Cagliostro, how come he's like, oh, this guy knew about absolute points in time and how to overcome them, right? That's a thing.
Yes, but that's his whole reason for going.
He's like,
he
knows
a whole bunch of books off the shelf.
He knows how to undo absolute time points. And then the Ancient One is like, yeah, but don't do that. But like, if the old guy who wrote a book about absolute time spots, did you just like learn about it but not really do it enough? Like, he didn't do it too much to destroy his universe? You know what I mean? Like, how can Doctor Strange learn from something that destroys the universe?
You could argue that maybe he did it wrong.
And he was like, oh, if I did this right, I would have fucked this up.
Or maybe he just like
only fucked it up a little bit.
Maybe that guy was just like, I figured it out, but I'm not going to do it.
I'm just going to put it in a book.
If I did, I'm going to put it in a book so everyone thinks I figured it out. But actually, I got like 98% of the way there. But like, I'm going to be long dead by the time anyone reads this book because I've been doing so much time traveling that I see that someone's going to look into it, and I'm going to sound so smart.
It's going to be the biggest.
I'm going to brag to everyone in heaven and or hell.
Because I thought, like, at the end when the universe is destroying, I was like, wait a minute, he learned this from a book. This isn't like something he's like doing on the spot. Somebody taught him this.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know any of this, dude. I really hate that it's part of the MCU. That whole thing, I was like, just have like a fun show with things happening and then like it ends. I don't need this to be. And again, the pessimistic side of me is sitting here with all the stupid idiots who I hope don't listen to our show because we bash them a lot, that are just like watching this and just like, oh no, this is crazy. And I'm just like, I can't do this. I can't be here.
So, Seth, give me 2 put-ups and a put-down.
Well, Andrew, I'm glad you asked. My first put-up is the magic fight. I usually don't like the fights, but this one I did. Usually I can't tell what's going on because they're so fucking dark. But this one, the things I needed to tell were really bright. So it worked. Also, you said that the capes were fighting, and when I was watching it, I was like, oh, I hope the capes fight. That would be cool. But it was too dark to tell what was going on, so I didn't know if they were actually fighting or just like flapping around in the wind. My second put up is something we didn't talk about, which is when Doctor Strange meets Evil Doctor Strange, and he goes, you've lost your marbles. And Evil Doctor Strange just goes, it was stupid.
When Doctor Strange is like gaining more power, he's just like gaining more power, and then he's like, oh, I'm going to take this cape off of a bug, and then I guess it doesn't match my wardrobe, so I guess I'll get new clothes to match it. And that's all fine and well and good, but then when he shows up at the end,
he's like a Disney cartoon villain.
He's like crazy. He's got like, he looks like Yellow Jacket in the last episode.
Because he has the dark eyes. That's how you know they're crazy.
He's just like completely unhinged, like you said. He's just like, I'm gonna bring Christine back.
You're gonna destroy the world. It's all worth it for Christine.
How about when he like turns into Christine and then flirts with himself?
How about, if he wants Christine back, just like ask the Ancient One to split you into half.
Well, to split you again and turn one of you into her.
Turn one of you into Christine and be like, you were a blank slate anyways, so who cares? You didn't have a character ever. Not even in your movie.
Now you're going to be into butt stuff.
Yeah, now I get what I want. I mean, Evil Doctor Strange would do butt stuff. He'd go... my put down is going to be the fucking time travel shit that doesn't make any sense and contradicts literally 6 hours of a show I hated and had to watch so that I could understand the time travel only for this episode, which if it was a real anthology series, I wouldn't care because it's totally separate, but they had to make it a big old point to sit there and be like, this is part of the MCU that you love so goddamn much, you idiots. Keep paying money on Disney Plus. Not that I'm bitter.
So I thought our put-ups and put-downs were going to be the exact same, and they mostly are. But my first put-up is also going to be the wizard fight. It's fun. It's neat. Especially big shout-out to the shadow thing. I thought that was real cool.
The shadow thing is the best thing I've seen in the MCU.
Yes,
it takes
it's awesome.
So as much as we talk about how these stories don't take a breath, that was the most like deliberate breath where it's a wide shot, no sound, nothing. You're just like, okay, this is done. And then like you see him in the shadow, but it could just be a transition. And then boom, he grabs him and pulls him out. It's perfect. I mean, it's great.
Do you think Multiverse of Madness is going to do anything even remotely as interesting that happens in this?
No, and I'm going to say that whoever wrote this episode stole that from a fan film.
Probably. My second put up is going to be when Doctor Strange is absorbing all the different monsters. Mostly because I just like seeing all the different monsters. There's some cool monster designs. I like the Deep Crow thing that has like 6 eyes. And
I was thinking about doing that, and
especially like when he absorbs them, he takes on their features for a second before he turns back into himself, and all that stuff is like, there's some care in there. They
had to
found
think
some
and make
monsters
designs.
Yeah.
I was going to make that a put up. I ultimately didn't because I felt it was a little too dark. I couldn't tell what was going on and what like they actually looked like. And I
feel like that is a problem with your TV or the room you're watching TV in.
Maybe. I mean, it probably is. I couldn't read not that I needed to, but in The Servant at the very beginning when they show the opening credits and they're like thin red text, I can't read it. It's impossible to read on the TV upstairs. But I like that he like took on the forms and stuff, but I wish that was I wish it contorted his body more than it did. Like I would have liked, I know he uses those powers when he fights Strange. He has like the snake thing and then it cuts and he has like a little snake face as he does like the snake move, but I wish he would have like kind of physically changed more than just...
I mean, he does have like that demon form at the end that's like a combination of all of them.
Yeah, and I guess I just wish that was kind of who Doctor Strange was fighting. But anyway, it's fine. It's a fine put up.
How about like the fight scene that I like the most out of anything in the Marvel Universe is also embodied literally the most out of the one thing I hate out of all these movies, which is that is quite literally Doctor Strange fighting the evil version of himself.
I did think of that.
My put down is also going to be the time travel nonsense. Just, it's, again, like you said, in and of itself, fine. In an anthology series, I probably wouldn't really bat much of an eye to it. But when it very clearly well, not very clearly, but as clearly as the Marvel Universe has done anything, establishes rules to the best of my ability to understand what it thinks it's doing. And then in the very next iteration of the Marvel Universe, it completely contradicts them for a mostly one-off story. Fuck you.
This episode does not gain anything by being tied so directly with the MCU as a whole. And the MCU proper. All the other ones lived and died on their own merit, 30 minutes, but this was just we don't need... It reminded me I'm not just watching a fun superhero show, and I'm watching a mess. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you like this, tell a friend. If you didn't, then lie to a friend. Check us out on Twitter @SoHowAbout. You can find me on Twitter @SethKumpf. You can find Andrew on Twitter @TessuDownist. And subscribe to us on YouTube @SoHowAbout.
And join us next time when we do this once more with Interference.
Watcher.
So, Seth, what are we watching next time?
Andrew, I'm not that glad you asked because that means we're still watching more of this. We're going to be watching What If Zombies. That's not even a real sentence or question. I mean, I guess it is. What if zombies?
No, because it's only...
There's no subject. Unless zombies is the subject. There's no predicate. Is zombies the predicate? What if zombies? What if zombies what? Why if zombies?
No, what if zombie? What if zom be? What if they be? What if those zoms be?
Yeah, but I'm looking at the actual text, the title text out, and it does not.
No. If we've learned anything about the Marvel Universe, it's that you can't just look at the text of it.
That's all the subtext is in between the lines. It's
exactly.
You gotta read the spaces, the space between the letters, which I should know that coming from graphic design, but I only know it as kerning.